Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
And my name is Dan.
and we're here to do our season review. We are recording on Monday night, so obviously the playoff final was yesterday, so we now know the sort of full lineup for the championship next season and the full outcome this season. So obviously we'll start off with that, and then we'll get into sort of all our various sort of awards and everything for the season. So we're going to keep this brief. We were talking beforehand. I don't want to go on an officiating rant. Um, so without getting too far into that, Dan, I guess we'll talk more. Like a lot of people will have seen the game. We'll talk more about the implication, I think, for the sort of the championship and for the two clubs. So on that front,
Yeah.
what do you think? Obviously, with Forest going up and Huddersfield staying down, what do you think for those two clubs?
Yeah, so I'll start with Forest. I think they were probably the better side yesterday, although it wasn't really a great game. It was pretty much like we suspected, with Huddersfield sitting in and trying to hit on the counter. Um, I think Forest will be in a really good place. I think the board and the owner will spend money now they're up there. They've got a good manager in Cooper who has contacts to loan players in or sign younger players. Rumours today that they're looking at Morgan Gibbs White, which would be a great signing. Even if they don't get Spence, you'd think they'd probably get Davis back. They'll keep Johnson, maybe loan Garner back. Um, so I think they'll be pretty solid. And as I mentioned on the last pod, I think they'll do the best out of Fulham, Bournemouth, and Forest. Huddersfield's quite interesting. Obviously, a great season for them. Came from nowhere. Corbran's done a brilliant job. You'd think that they'd probably definitely lose O'Brien. Keeps getting linked with Leeds, and for me, he was by far the best player on the pitch yesterday. If you said to me who's the best player, who's most likely Premier League ready, it's O'Brien by a mile. I don't know what you thought about O'Brien.
Yeah, I thought he was very good.
Yeah. And then it's just, can they keep any of the players? Obviously, Colwell will probably, they won't get him back on loan. Will they get offers for maybe Nichols, Sorba Thomas? And I suppose the one good thing is, because Leeds didn't get relegated, they might be able to keep Corberan, because I think Leeds might come knocking if they got relegated. So it'll be interesting because they're so reliant on keeping the games tight. There could be a variance where they just drop to mid-table, and then it might not be playing any worse. If they just might get the wrong side of variance next season. So yeah, from a Gaffr point of view, I'm looking forward to Huddersfield because they weren't really options, especially towards the end, because they didn't really have any double game weeks. I know you got burned by Toffolo continuously, and then Sorba Thomas was a forward where hopefully he'll be midfielder next year. Um, so yeah, I don't know what you thought about those two teams, Angus.
Yeah, I mean, I think Huddersfield. I'll start with Huddersfield because obviously they're staying, and with all due respect to them, they're probably the sort of less animating to talk about because we've said for a while that they were going under the radar. They were an underrated team. They're a good team with a good manager, and not much has changed on that front. I'm not sure they'll be sort of in the playoffs again next year, but I do think they're sort of a very solid team. I do think they'll lose a couple of their better players, which it will be interesting to see the effect. But Lewis O'Brien obviously is very good. He'll be moving on almost certainly. I know I identified from quite early on yesterday, just to get briefly into the game, that I don't think the move away from having Hogg in the middle of the back three and putting Sarr in there and putting Hogg in midfield and Russell on the bench worked. I think it was quite clear from early on it didn't work.
Yeah.
I know that it was probably done with concerns about Keenan Davis, but I think they changed it 10 minutes into the second half, and it definitely made a difference. It would have been interesting to see if they'd stuck with that, which had been working for them. But no, I'm not going to sort of be too critical, but I do think I'm looking forward to having Toffolo back again. He got me some points. He got my bench a lot of points, but I think they're interesting, and I think that they'll probably be able to keep a good chunk of their players. Like I think O'Brien is the one where you're like they're going to struggle to keep a hold of him. But I think the vast majority of that squad could be there, and I think we were tipping them to be in a relegation battle this year. So obviously, and I think a lot of people were. It's not just us that ended up being wrong on that. And I think it's credit to them. And this might have been their chance, that it might be sort of a few years before another opportunity like this comes around again. But I think all in all, it was a good season for them. Forest, I felt like they needed promotion more. Obviously, they're a big club. Particularly for the championship, they're a big club. We all know about their history and everything. It'll be interesting to see, as you said, with the loan players, how many of them they can keep around. I know Jed Spencer said he wants to stay at Forest, but that's all well and good. But if a team like Tottenham comes calling and offers him, first team football in the Champions League, or an imminent pathway to first team football in the Champions League and top six of the Premier League, that's going to be difficult to turn down. But if it was a choice between someone like, I don't know, Brentford or staying at Forest, not saying that Brentford are bad by any means, but it's that level of being offered European football versus a club you've got an affinity for and you're happy at. I'm also interested to see how much money he goes for in the end. But Brennan Johnson probably would have been leaving. I always like to see players get into the Premier League with their sort of hometown clubs, so it'd be interesting to see what he can do there. Garner, there's a lot of debate about among Manchester United fans about, is he going to be involved next season? Is he going to be in the squad? Is he going to be loaned out again? It sounds like he's going to be given a pre-season. It sounds like Ten Hag wants to have a look at him. But if they decide to loan him out, Forest would kind of be a logical destination. It's probably lower end of the Premier League, but getting regular Premier League football. I could see the logic there. Keenan Davis, I think, will probably stick around, and Zinkernagel, I think, could be with them, although he's another interesting one. So they're very interesting, but I think it's a club that probably we've thought for a while probably should be in the Premier League. Particularly shouldn't have been out of the Premier League for that long. So I think I'm interested to see what they can do with that team. They've obviously got a good manager, and like you say, he's got connections. So I think they'll end up with some quality players as well, both in terms of signings and probably a couple of loans again. Not as many as they had this season, but I do think they'll probably work a couple of loans in there as well, which isn't terrible, particularly if you're looking to solidify and get that sort of little bit of extra quality in there. But yeah, I miss having some of their assets in Gaffr next season, but it would be interesting to see them in the Premier League. But speaking of sort of the Championship and Gaffr, the main thing for this podcast is sort of our awards, our season awards. We did it last year, and we had two sets, essentially a Championship set and a Gaffr set, and we're going to do largely the same this season. So in terms of the order I've written down, we're doing the championship awards first, and what I've got currently as the first one is team of the season. So this is our sort of team rather than the club team that was the best. So Dan, do you want to go through bit by bit, as in sort of position group by position group, or the whole 11?
Uh, we'll do like goalie and defenders, and then taking turns. So I've picked Nichols in goal. Um, I think he won a lot of points for Huddersfield, especially at the start of the season. I think towards the second half, they were managing games quite well and looking better going forward. So I think, considering he was back up at MK, for them to sign Nichols and him do as well, I think just a really, really good signing and probably the best keeper. I've got Spence at right back. Um, it's obvious, isn't it? Pace, power going forward. Um, Maybe final ball's not as great. Like, I was looking at his stats, it's not as good as some other right backs, but it's just how his overall play is just so dangerous. I've got Toffolo left back. Um, Always find left back as a. I had this last year as quite like a problem area. Probably if it was going off the start of the season, probably Zamora would have got picked, but he was injured, so and Toffolo stepped in. And my two centre backs are gone for Tosin of Fulham. I think if you're bear in mind at times he's had Adoy and Tete at one side and Ream the other. I think it's gone under the radar how good Fulham have been defensively. And I've gone Naismith, the other centre back. Just, I personally think he was the best centre back in the league last year. We won't talk about what he's done since, but yeah, best centre back in the league. What about you then, Angus?
So I went Nichols in goal as well.
Yeah,
Like you said, I think he was probably the best keeper in the league this year, and it felt fairly obvious for me. Um, I've gone largely the same at the back. So I did have a back three for a while. I've gone a back four. I've got Spence at right back. I went Tossin and McKenna. It was a real toss
yeah,
up for me between McKenna and Naismith.
same with
Um,
me, really.
I leaned McKenna, but um, I wouldn't argue too hard if someone wanted Naismith in over him.
Yeah,
But I went McKenna, and I had Toffolo at left back as well. Um, I know that the two fullbacks technically played wing backs in front of a back three, so it would be slightly different. But I wasn't going to get too deep into that. So yeah, so that's sort of my back, well, five, including the goalkeeper. What
yeah.
about the midfield?
Um, Two positions I thought were obvious. So Lewis O'Brien, best centre mid in the league. Um, I think for the first half of the season, he went quite under the radar, and obviously because Huddersfield have been on TV quite a lot recently, it's thrust him into the light of how good he is. Um, and he's just an all-round centre mid. He'll get stuck in, but he's good at travelling with the ball. He also can do a pass in between the lines. So yeah, Lewis O'Brien, best centre mid in the league. Um, at 10, I've gone for Gibbs White. I think without Gibbs White, Sheffield United could easily have finished mid-table. I know. At some points towards the end, they didn't have any strikers, but I think Gibbs White has shown that he shouldn't be playing in the Championship, and he won't be. He'll be in the Premier League, whether he stays at Wolves or goes somewhere else. And the last one, I've literally just decided I'm gonna pick Billing. And I think when you do these team of the seasons, I think you can think of like recency bias. But I think if you look throughout the whole season, I think Billings probably been one of the best centre mids in the league. What about you, Angus?
So yeah, the easiest pick for me was Lewis O'Brien. it's partially, particularly trying to work out which sort of more attacking midfielders I could potentially get away with putting in central
Yeah,
midfield. But I thought he was really good in terms of out and out central midfielders. There weren't too many, um, sort of as good as him. Um, I had James Garner.
yeah,
I think both the Forest centre mids did really well this season, but I had James Garner, and then I squeezed Morgan Gibbs White in there.
yeah.
So for like you said, I mean we've heard already all the sort of talk coming out about multiple teams that are going to be interested in him for next season. So he'll be playing for someone in the Premier League next season. And then the attack, who have you gone for?
So I went. I've sort of cheated. I've put two right wingers. Um, I've gone for Harry Wilson, even though he had that period where he just didn't do anything, but his numbers are so good. And I've gone for Brennan Johnson as well. Um, just considering this time last year, he just finished. He missed out in the playoffs with Lincoln. His progression has been frightening, and I think he's going to adjust to the Premier League quite well. Um, I would like to mention Vyman. I did think of Vyman, and his numbers are absolutely ridiculous, but I I have to go Wilson and Johnson over him. And striker Mitrovic, which seems hard on like Solanke, but it has to be Mitro with his record breaking year.
Yeah. Um, so I have two of the same three. And I am not omitting Harry Wilson because I had a big rant about him in that period, uh, because I do think he was good this season. He was very good, and obviously the output is there to see and everything. Um, for me, it was almost a straight toss up between him and Brennan Johnson, and I edged Brennan Johnson in the end. But like that's another one where like it probably wouldn't take much to sway me to change my mind between those two.
Yeah,
And so I nominally essentially have him playing in support of Mitrovic and Solanke.
that's fair enough. Yeah,
So I've sort of manoeuvred it that way. um, but I'm not sure how well my team would do functionally, but that's not the point of this exercise, so I
no,
choose
it's
to
not.
ignore that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of the same sorts of players there. I mean, we could talk to no end about the players that we've sort of left out who were nearly there. The likes of, I mean, for me, Harry Wilson, John Swift,
Travers.
Travers, Willock.
Yeah,
There's any number of players there that had a case, but that's part of the point of making a team of the season. There are going to be sort of hard decisions and players that miss out and that sort of thing. So that's what we've got there. The next one we've got is player of the season.
this is obvious, isn't it?
Do we need to
It has
talk
to be
too much about this?
It has to be Mitrovic. Just a crazy level, a crazy goal scoring season. Um, surely he's going to keep them up on his own next year. You'd have thought if they play the way that suits him.
He's certainly going to like help with that. I didn't. There were some awards where I did put quite a lot of thought into them. This was not one of them. This was Alexander Mitrovic, and I didn't really have to think too much about it. Some people will say, "Oh yeah, it's just goals or whatever." Like some of his interplay was also very good, and also he didn't just break the championship goal scoring record; he smashed it. Like it's just like
Especially they've got the old one by the guy Wickenham. Bear
yeah,
in mind, this time last year, everyone was raving about Tony.
Yeah, we weren't sure whether like Tony's 31 was going to be topped.
Yeah.
Mitrovic did it with over 10 games to spare. That's how
Yeah.
stupid this season was. And someone pointed out the other day, his first goal of the season was the one where he slipped over, was on the floor, and the
Oh my
goalkeeper
word.
kicked it into him. That was how his goal scoring season started. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just a phenomenal season at the head of a very good Fulham team. And yeah, I don't think there's much else that needs to be said on that,
No,
really. The next one we've got is Young Player of the Season. Who have you got for that?
I've gone for Johnson. I don't
Yeah,
know about
if
you.
if Fabio Carvalho hadn't missed that stretch in the middle of the
Yeah,
season
it
when there
might have
was
been close.
the injury and COVID and everything, like it would be very close. I was tempted to give it to him anyway, just because of just how good he was. But I think given that Brennan Johnson basically played the whole season, he also had the edge for me. Very good season. Um, but Carvalho was the other one that was on my mind in terms of just the quality there. Again, a bit of a boring one, really. We don't really have much else to say on
Yes.
that. The next one we have is Manager of the Season.
See, this one I thought was hot. I think it's between three. It's between Jones, Cooper, and Corberan. And I've gone for Corberan because I think, although Luton probably have the lowest budget, I think it was quite obvious that Luton were going to finish top half, or quite widely known that that was going to happen. Whereas Huddersfield, everyone predicted them to be near the bottom. And I know Cooper's done a great job. He took over when they were 9 points off the playoffs, with 38 games to go, Cooper. But has to be Corberan
Yeah, I
for
mean the other
miles.
one that I had the same three. I also had, and I know it's really boring, and they were really good, and I still had Marco Silva on my list because they were so good that I just thought it's like when people talk about like Pep and Klopp in the Premier League, where they were so good that he
But
made my shortlist, but like he was the first one out. I just wanted to mention
yeah,
him because they were that good.
you say that though, Angus, but I believe this Fulham side should have got over 100 points.
Yeah, but to be fair, I think if there hadn't been some of the COVID issues in particular, I think they probably would have got over 100 points.
I don't know. I think they
Um,
should have done.
but I'm going with Carlos Corberan as well. I think Steve Cooper
Yeah,
did a very good job. I think the pushback I have is I thought that Forest were going to be a playoff team. And he came in after 7 games. Now, bear in mind they were at a very low point after 7 games. I'm acknowledging that they were, and so there's a bit of turning around that needs happening there, just in terms of when things are going in the wrong direction, you have to stop the downward turn before you go upwards. But he did that, and he did a very good job. They weren't that far away from automatic promotion by the end of it, or with a couple of games to go. But we spoke, and we weren't the only ones. Lots of people did, about thinking that Huddersfield would be quite possibly in a relegation scrap, and they finished third and lost in the playoff final. And a lot of credit for that has to go to Carlos Corberan. I think he's done a great job with Huddersfield this season, and for me, it's mainly just the biggest disparity between sort of the expectation and what happened.
yeah,
To give him credit for that, I mean, I'm not saying it's all him. Obviously, the players have to do a job as well, but that's why for me it's Corberan as well. But I think Cooper and Jones as well did good jobs as well, and that they're worth mentioning. Um, the next one we've got is an interesting one. This is where it starts getting into. I think the options open up a little bit more.
yeah.
Signing of the season.
I went for Spence. I thought just how he's changed the Forest attack, especially down the right side. Um, it's weird because there wasn't a lot of money floating around in the Championship, so I think Spence, to be honest. I think what you thought of Spence going into it and where he is now, I think that's proved he's been a great signing.
Yeah, so I have a different one, but Spence was on my three-man shortlist for this. The other one was Morgan Gibbs. One of the other ones was Morgan Gibbs White, or the other one that I didn't pick was Morgan Gibbs White. But I went for Harry Wilson.
Oh no, Angus.
We know Harry Wilson's quality, but the difference he made to them this season, particularly when you're looking to build around Mitrovic, someone like Harry Wilson is such a good addition that it felt a little bit like Jed Spence was great, don't get me wrong, and he was one I sort of very much thought about, but it just sort of felt to me the more I looked at it that like Harry Wilson was just sort of staring at me. So it's a really boring pick, and I don't like generally making boring picks, but I just sort of looked at it and I was like, that that extra quality. I mean, part of it for me was sort of like that they were realistically looking at giving minutes to Anthony Knockaert, and then Harry
Oh,
Wilson
no.
came in and saved them from that. So, but no, I just thought he was really good this season, despite my rant at him in the middle of the season. He was really good, and um, yeah, but Gibbs White and Spence, I think both um, really good acquisitions for their teams as well. Um, this one was really hard. Uh,
Oh no, I thought it was quite easy.
well, it was hard. It was hard, and then for me, it was quite easy. But worst signing of the season.
Martin Piero from Middlesbrough. They spent millions on him and he's done nothing.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to him, there were, and this is not me sort of jumping into Middlesbrough. There was expected to be an adjustment period, and I mean, you had what after 3 months, Neil Warnock saying he didn't know where to play him, so that can't help. But particularly from my personal point of view, um, I'm going with the same club.
Oh no, I know who you're going to pick.
I am going with Aaron Connolly.
I knew it. I knew.
Like it became clear that Middlesbrough's issue was scoring goals. They signed Aaron Connolly almost as soon as the January window opened, and basically down the stretch, their issue was they didn't score enough goals. Yes, Joe Lumley in goal was a problem, but they didn't score enough goals. They signed Aaron Connolly on like the second or third day of the transfer window. He was the player they went in and prioritised. He played a lot of their games down the stretch or in the second half of the season, and I think he scored 2 goals. Like,
Had a lot of shots though.
yeah, he's not very good though. But he was supposed to come in, bring that Premier League quality, bring them goals, and like somehow he kept getting selected. It's one of the things I would criticise Chris Wilder for. Why he kept picking Aaron Connolly despite the fact he wasn't giving them anything, I'm not sure. But well, I know why, and he wasn't giving them nothing. But like at the end of the day, he scored. I think it's 2 goals in the second half of the season. Like for a team where one of the main reasons they've missed out on the playoffs is a lack of goals. So and I just don't like him. So so
Have you
so
got
Aaron Connolly.
any, any other contenders for that?
Um. So I
James
had
Collins has to be in there.
who?
James
Oh
Collins. I
yes.
know. I know it's only on a free, but he went from basically behind Moore to fifth choice striker.
So I had uh particularly because the fans really didn't seem to like him. I had Dion Sanderson when he went to QPR in the second half of the
Oh yeah,
season.
or
And
Hendrick.
Jeff Hendrick. Jeff Hendrick is always a good answer to this sort of question. And the other one for me was Freddie Woodman.
Oh yeah, but he didn't play. That's a bit
No,
unfair,
but they
really.
they, they brought him in on loan in January, and like he played one FA Cup game that they lost, and that was it.
They lost to was it Boreham Wood?
I think so.
It was a non-league team,
Yeah.
weren't it?
Um, but yeah, for me it's Aaron Connolly, but there were a few. I think if you kept going, you could find a few. But that was where I decided to go with that one. Any time to opportunity to slag off Aaron Connolly, I'm there. Uh, so the next one we've got is the team that finished in the top 10 that we think will have a drop next season. Probably we're talking like sort of bottom half.
See, I thought this. I think there's quite a few teams that
Yeah,
could drop from the top 10. I've gone Huddersfield, and it's only because I think their games are such low margin that I think some of the games they were winning by the odd goal, they might start losing by the odd goal, and maybe they lose a couple of players. But like I said, I could have picked some others. I'll let you say first before I reel off the teams who I think are going to go lower.
so I could have named a few as well. I've gone for a slightly different one in this category, and it's more because of the unknown. And I've gone for
Mm,
Blackburn.
yeah, well, they're one on the list.
Yeah. We still don't know who the manager's going to be, and they seem
Duncan
to be casting
Ferguson.
a wide net and deciding they don't want any of them or not getting any of them or whatever. It's a team whose goal scoring output was heavily reliant on Ben Brereton Diaz, who I don't think will be there next season.
Yeah,
Their two best defenders from this season will be gone in Lenahan and Van Hecker. Nyambe is currently gone.
yeah,
Rothwell is gone. Like you start reeling through it, and it's like there's a lot of the team that's not there that's going to need replacing. If Ben
yeah,
Brereton Diaz goes, they're going to need to replace just goal scoring, particularly with the likes of Rothwell being gone as well. I'm done waiting for the Sam Gallagher sort of goal scoring breakout to happen. It's just not going to happen at this point. They've got some decent players there. I mean, obviously, Cadro was good for them this season as well. He's gone back to Brighton. Like they've got a couple of exciting players. I really like Markande, who they brought in from Tottenham. Buckley, we saw. Dolan, like there's some good players there, but there's just so much unknown and so much that they could have to replace that I could
yeah,
see them having a bit of a drop next season.
yeah.
Plus, I
Al-
don't like not knowing who the manager is going to be. So
Also got Dak. Hopefully they'll get him back. Full pre-season could make a difference. I think.
mm,
I know you're not too sure about that, Angus, but
I just worry. I worry about how much of just an impact the injuries have had at this point. I'm not
yeah.
saying that he's useless, but I just worry about how much of an impact he can actually have at this point.
Uh, some other teams, I don't know if you believe. I think Sheffield United could drop. Got rid of
Sheffield
their
United,
best,
almost anything could happen.
like, got rid of their best player. It's an aging squad. They're still over reliant on 57-year-old Billy Sharp. Um, I think they can. I think Luton can drop probably down to mid-table. Um, Blackburn, like you said, Millwall could drop as well. Wallace is definitely going. So yeah, three, probably 4 or 5 teams I can see dropping.
Yeah, and I think you've got some teams that were lower down the table that could be interesting, which is our sort of final championship category, which is sort of the realistically bottom half or lower mid-table team that we think could challenge for or finish in the playoffs next season. So who did you have for this one?
So I've gone for Swansea, and that's just because the way they were starting to play towards the end of the season, especially going forward. I think Martin found the set way of playing. If they can keep Hero and Obafemi together, they got Patterson. Maybe they get Wolf back. can, and also I think Christie's out of contract as well. So if they can sign him, and you would think that Martin is going to target centre backs who can play football how he wants, whereas I think he's basically having to play defenders who he doesn't really want to play there. So I think Swansea could be interesting. What about you, Angus?
Yeah, Swansea were the main one I wrote down. It's also like easy for us to forget. Martin came in basically like at the last minute,
Yeah,
um, in terms of when the season started and everything. So him getting, particularly the way he wants to play, you kind of need more time to implement that. And I think we saw that coming along as the season went on. So it wouldn't surprise me if they improved. I wanted to mention one that finished a
oh,
bit lower down because it felt a bit of a cheat. Like they were
oh,
sort of like barely in the bottom half, Swansea. So the one I threw out there that could go higher, I mean, it could go any number of ways. But I just wanted to mention Hull because they're going to be interesting if nothing else, and their team could look so different that it could go like any way. They could push up the table, they could push down the table. Like I
yeah,
think they finished 18th or 19th this season.
19th
And the
this
one thing
season.
that I feel fairly sure of is they won't finish 19th again. I don't know which way it will go, but like it will change. Uh,
Yeah, what I like looking on Twitter is the whole fans are like 100% sure they're going to sign all these players. They keep getting linked to everyone, but they've not signed a single player. So I don't know.
it's only end of May. Um,
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah.
The way I view it is, it's either going to go well or they're going to overspend and then be in serious trouble in 2 or 3 years' time.
Oh
I
yeah, but that's why I wanted to mention them as well because
yeah,
if this clicks with how much sort of overhaul there could be there, they could be an interesting one next season. But it's just such an unknown. Um, That's it for the championship awards. I think we've had a couple of questions, but we'll cover those at the end. We'll go through sort of everything we've done, and then we'll cover those at the end. So we move on to the more Gaffr specific awards here. So some of these are the same format as the championship awards, but obviously there'll be slight differences here. So the first one we've got from a Gaffr point of view is team of the season. So we'll go through goalkeeper and defence, then midfield, then sort of forward,
yeah.
same as or goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and forwards, as they were classified in the game. So who did you have in goal, Dan?
I went for Simon Moore. I thought 4 million. Um, just he didn't even have to score any points just for him being 4 million. But I think just how important he was to our teams this year, I've gone for Simon Moore, and that'll be a current theme. They might not be the highest scoring
Yeah.
players, but yes. So I've gone for Simon Moore.
So I had one of the highest scorers in this, but just thinking about relative value, particularly once we cottoned
Yeah,
onto it, which is Mark Travers.
yeah.
Second highest scoring keeper in the game. He ended the season at 5.5. He was cheaper than that for most of the season, playing in
What's
goal
it?
for
five
Bournemouth.
million.
Yeah, playing in goal for Bournemouth. Like that you got that value. You still got good value. It wasn't the like Simon Moore level of value, but you still got very good, very good value for most of the season. You know, for Bournemouth's goalkeeper, and he scored the second most points. So as well. So I went with him. Um, what about the defenders?
So I had three defenders. I've gone for Bree because just quite cheap, and I just think throughout the season he was constantly in our teams. I think he had a period just after COVID where he got an injury for a couple of weeks, and then obviously he got the injured towards the end of the season, but he was pretty much guaranteed to start as well. I've gone for McNair. Like, who doesn't like a penalty taking centre back, even if he does miss occasionally? Um, and I've also gone for Townsend. I think we underestimate how good Townsend and Furlong was at the start of the season. He was basically essential for probably 2/3 of the game. So that's my three defenders.
Uh, so we have two of the same.
Yeah,
So I had Bree and I had McNair,
yeah,
and I also went with Jed Spence. It's the lazy one. I know he's the top scorer, but I mean he was also a good value pick for
yeah,
a lot of the season, which did play into my thinking. I mean, I know some of these like Toffolo were right up there as well, but and Townsend, but they tailed off slightly. I mean, Townsend was still sort of
yeah.
top 7 or 8, and he was close to me. But yeah, I just went for Spence, like I say, because of that value and you know how sort of essential he was for a while almost, where it's like you were really hurt if you were one of the few
Yeah,
people who didn't have
but
Spence in
that
your team.
that was the same as Townsend as well.
Yeah,
Especially like at the start, he was
yeah,
getting like double figures basically every game week.
yeah. So then midfielders,
So I went for obviously four. We've probably got. I'll be amazed if we don't have the same four: Wilson, Johnson, Swift, and Gibbs White.
we have three of the same four.
Okay. Well, I think they're pretty obvious. Swift, unbelievable. I think we noticed it. I think he started six, and
Might have
because
been
he was
six
in,
five, but
yeah, he was obviously injured, and I think we knew coming into the season that he was going to be their talisman. So a lot of people jumped on. Wilson just it's Harry Wilson, and he's so good on bonus. Like he all he had to do was do a couple of key passes, and that was him on top bonus. Johnson just five. I think he was 5.5, and it looks a bargain now, but it was probably a fair price going into the season. And Gibbs White, even though he was in that range where there wasn't a lot of options this season, hopefully that'll change next season. So yeah, those four were me pretty obvious to be honest.
so I have Wilson, I have Johnson, and I have Swift.
Yeah,
So this was one of my preseason picks that I kept mentioning and was incredible for so many people for so long. Fabio Carvalho
yeah,
started the season as a 5 million midfielder, um, and we sort of forget like right from the start of the season it was like launched into, and he's put in terms of first team football he'd played like 2 or 3 games in the Premier League and that was
yeah.
it, right at the end, and then he launched right into it. Obviously he's ended up at Liverpool, and everyone can see the talent that's there, but it's also that value play. I think he only just finished off the first page of midfielders, and I think that's largely because of the little period he missed. But he scored over 200 points for a midfielder that
Yeah.
started at 5 million. It's kind of insane. So
I
Gibbs
think
White was
that
close for me, but
yeah.
particularly as I owned Carvalho for. I mean, I also kept him for a long time when he was injured, but um, with that added bonus, I felt like I had to get him in there.
I think there were a few others that should get a mention. Cornick for a period was really good value, I think. Willock,
Yeah.
uh, Wallace, on and off. Wallace was good as well. I don't know if you any more Angus you can think of.
So one that I know a lot of people got joy out of owning that I was going to mention was Keen Lewis Potter.
See, he never. I brought him in 2 or 3 times. He never done anything for me.
Yeah, much to my frustration, I didn't own him very much at all,
Yeah.
and I noticed people getting sort of joy out of him. And you know, pod favorite Jacob Brown.
Oh yes. Probably a striker next year though.
Yeah. And we'll mention Callum O'Hare because obviously we've been
Oh
talking about a
no,
couple of
no,
budget ones.
no!
I
Draw
know
the
he
line.
I know he trolled you,
Oh no.
your ultimate troll this season, but he did do a good job for people. So just thought I'd mention him, even though he didn't make it for me. And then the forwards.
So we've got two, right? We've definitely got two.
We
Mitro
have
and
to.
Solanke.
I think personally, I think there's only four options.
Oh, really?
I
Well,
mean,
look,
you could probably stretch it to about six, but I was only
I've,
picking between four.
so I went Mitro, Solanke, and Victor. I thought he was near enough. He was good value, Victor. I
Yeah.
think. Is that what you got?
No, so Victor was the
Uh,
one I left out of my final four. So I went really boring, and it ended up, I realised, being the three top scoring forwards. And I
yeah.
have Mitrovic, Solanke, and Vyman.
See, Viber was a funny one. I punted on him a few times, but he never stayed in my team.
Yeah,
Like he was always one. He was just doing so well, and basically because Bristol City couldn't defend, they had to attack. So whenever there was like a boost or anything, it was like, yeah, we'll get Vyman in. But yeah, I can agree with that.
and then the other two that I like sort of would have thought of or would have you know wanted to mention were Joel Piero. I had a great time owning Joel Piero this season.
Oh, Obafemi.
And I think we forget because of how much it tailed off the second half of the season. We do have to mention Ben Brereton Diaz, and particularly the
Yeah,
first half of the season.
yeah.
But
Might never get to play with him again.
yeah,
Could be out. Brereton
um,
Diaz.
I think that's the logical sort of read. But yeah, I think Mitrovic and Solanke were obvious picks. Um, and
I
then I
think
do think
Victor just for the value.
yeah,
I
I think Victor was very close for me. I went Vyman, particularly because I spent so much time earlier in the season sort of slagging him off and everything, and then he kept scoring points that I had to at least acknowledge how well he'd done. Um, Player of the season,
Mitrovic.
yeah, you know, outscored anyone else. What was it in the end by about 50 points? No, I think he was about 50 points ahead of the next best scorer. Um,
Yes, a lot.
I mean, he scored all those goals. You have all the points for all those goals. For long stretches, you could argue for basically the full season. You had to have an armband on him, or you were losing out as well. And it's kind of that simple, really.
Yeah.
Um, what about another fun one? Flop of the season.
It's got to be Dean Garner.
Grady Diangana was the first person I wrote down.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyone else?
so I also
Boston?
wrote down it feels a bit unfair because a lot of it was injuries, and no one was as high on him as someone else on this pod, but Kiefer Moore.
Yeah, that. Yeah.
Um, we also have to take a bit of a sort of, my bad in Lyndon Dykes. I really thought he was going to be a good option this season, and he really wasn't. I picked him multiple times this season, and he basically did nothing for me. Um, And then the other thing I had written down was Sheffield United forwards not called Billy Sharp.
Oh God. Game week one. Least
Lise
Mouse
Mousset,
captain.
Lise Mousset bandwagon. I'd almost forgotten the Lise Mousset bandwagon.
He had one good outing in pre-season. They only played two pre-season friendlies, but suddenly Least Mouse was a must
Yeah.
going into game week one. Oh my
Um,
word.
but I
You
think
had
the answer
McGoldrick.
really has to be Grady Diangana, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Did you have
If
anyone else?
Nah, don't. Maybe Campbell when he went to
Yeah.
Bournemouth, but yeah.
I'll also say
Hope.
Sean Morrison because I thought he was going to be really good, and Cardiff were so bad that he became the non-option.
Well, not that he wasn't first choice.
Yeah, he kept dropping. He kept coming in and out of the team. Uh, like they for a while they rotated, and like he was in and out of the team, and Flint was scoring, and Morrison was doing nothing, and all of this. So yeah, given what we expected from him coming into the season, he was another big one for me. But the next award we've got is the best value pick.
I've gone for James Bree.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just reliable all season.
Y-
Um, on free kicks, corners, just a really good fantasy asset from a team that kept, well, I think it was 17, 18 clean sheets. So can't really ask for more, I don't think.
No, so I was struggling to split two. It was James Bree and the much discussed Fabio Carvalho.
Oh, it's
Uh,
got to be Brie.
um, so for the sake of balance, I'll say Carvalho. um,
I couldn't
as
remember how much Carvalho started on, to be honest.
is
So
he
that's
was a
why I went for
five he
Brie.
was a 5 million midfielder at the start of the season. So when
Yeah,
you think about the production there, it's incredible, really. 200, I think it's 205. I wrote down 205 points from a 5 million midfielder.
not bad.
It's
Brie's
not
got
it's
more.
not bad, really. um, Gaffer moment of the season.
Oh, McNamara scoring 2 goals after I've been saying he was a great asset.
Yeah,
That's my moment
that's a
for me.
good one. So for me, it's game week 22, which was when Riley McGree got me 14 points. Similar, where I'd been sort of talking him up, particularly as a budget option, and I brought him in and he got me 14 points while
Yeah,
playing for Birmingham.
I think that's the most shocking thing.
Particularly as the season went on. um, and then a secondary one, but it wasn't as good as that, was going with Carl and Grant in game week 46 and him sort of getting in double digits for me. But no, it was McGree. Um,
Yeah.
and just to finish our awards on sort of a nice fun note,
Oh no.
is what was your worst Gaffer moment of the season?
So mine was overhauling in game week 6, and I went back and worked this out. I took out it just in this game week. It gets worse. I took out Swift 3 goals. This was just in the game week. Zamora 2 goals. Victor 1 goal. I decided to go from double West Brom defence to double West Brom attack, who then continuously kept not starting or coming off at 60 minutes. And every time I was about to take them out, they'd suddenly get like returns, and I'd keep them, and that's what cost my season. I went from inside the top 100 to 700th, and that's why I finished so low down. So yeah, don't go double West Brom attack. Although they
So
do have Swift, so that might balance it out.
yeah, so that there were some possibilities for me that I sort of overlooked, because
It can't be as bad as that.
the thing I
I'm
kept
sorry.
coming back to in terms of the worst moment of the season was just, I think I wrote down in my notes, game week 1, the state of that team.
Oh God.
So for context, my game week 1 team, after game week 1, I had an overall rank of 3.1k. I decided. Remember when we all decided we were going to captain a Sheffield United forward in game week 1?
Yeah.
I had captain David McGoldrick, who blanked. Also, because Kiefer Moore was out, I had the bright idea of vice captaining James Collins, who blanked. I had Alexander Mitrovic blank, Carvalho blank, Matt Phillips blank, Chris Willock blank, David Brooks blank, Kenny Tete and Connor Townsend returned for me, Darnell Furlong blank. And the thing that perfectly summed this week up as well was I had John Swift's 14 points on my bench. So I think I can legitimately say it was literally all uphill from game week 1 and that team. Looking back at it, I couldn't quite. I knew it was bad at the start, but looking at that team, it's just like when you get so clever about there was all the stuff about how Matt Phillips was playing as the centre forward for West Brom, and like I say, James
Yeah.
Collins was going to start up front for Cardiff because Kiefer Moore was out after the Euros and everything, and then
But let's be honest. Going into game week 1, we all thought Cardiff they'd just finished last season quite well,
yeah,
and Cardiff had a really good set of fixtures.
yeah.
They started with, was it Barnsley at home,
I
and
don't
it
remember
was it.
because he didn't even last through all of Cardiff's theoretical good fixtures because I was so annoyed by him by like game week 3 that he was gone again.
But I was looking. I've just gone on mine, and it's pretty similar. The only difference is I had Harry Wilson who started, and I should have known. I've checked the bench. Swift and O'Hara on it. Swift 14 points, O'Hare 5. I should have known. That's that. If one team sums up my season, that was it.
Yeah. So yeah, it was all uphill from there, quite almost literally. So that was undoubtedly. I mean, I know there were lots of sort of COVID issues throughout the season, but those were sort of
I
the case for everyone, and it didn't feel as bad in terms of when you lost even 4 or so players to COVID because a lot of the time everyone else was losing similar numbers to
well,
COVID.
it actually helped me out because I was focusing on the game, whereas I think some other players would. It was round about Christmas, and
Yeah,
because I had my son, I was obviously off around Christmas. Um, it actually helped because I was just focusing on Gaffr, so
yeah, but there were
it
there
actually
were
helped
quite
me
a
out.
few times, particularly earlier, where like we were discovering that people were out when the team sheets dropped and everything,
Oh
which I
yeah,
was just
yeah,
sort of like, you can't do anything with that. Like that
no.
they had COVID, like they were out the team, and all of a sudden it was, oh yeah, these 3 people all have COVID. Like, but everyone was dealing with that, whereas not everyone decided that those moves were good in game week 1. Um, but yeah, we've had a few sort of people message in with their ideas for questions or awards or after. Oh God, I'm gonna forget this. So you're gonna have to remind me on one of these. But we had Joel. Lovely to meet Joel on Saturday in person at the game week 39 game. He's asked most overhyped asset of the season.
Johnson, Clark, Harris.
Didn't he have an injury at the start where so many of us that had him like were saved because we got rid of him because he had an injury or something?
He basically there was all the talk about was he going to move as well.
Yeah,
Like, and basically what it was, I think he had like COVID and an injury, and it
yeah,
was literally the week before, and he still hadn't played. I think he played
yeah,
like a Tuesday night before, and he played like half of. He did start against Luton,
yeah,
but he wasn't fit, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's gonna play," and I was like, "There's no way he's gonna play." He did play, but he just wasn't there. He wasn't
yeah.
fit.
Because I brought James Collins in for him, which
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I had Sammy Smodics playing instead.
Yeah. Well, Sammy Smodics was a better option. I actually really struggled with this one in terms of most overhyped. Um, I actually went with Lise Mousset, in part just for the start, where there was all this stuff about how great Lise Mousset was going to be and everything, and
Yeah.
it just did not happen at all.
I can't
Um,
wait for game week 1 and everyone's on Ashley Barnes.
God no. There's one thing I can guarantee on this pod right now. It's that there is a 0% chance that Ashley Barnes will be in my game week 1 team. I will pay a fine to charity or whatever if Ashley Barnes is in my game week 1 team. I am that confident. Uh, but yeah, I just thought I was thinking back. I was trying to think of like who was really overhyped, and I think Clark Harris example of that. But I just kept coming back to like going into those first couple of weeks where it was like that's how good Lys Mousset was going to be, and he didn't even make it through the season.
No.
um, FPL Buddy has asked us the worst red card given in the championship this season. Was that tossing against Barnsley? Was that the one?
No, it's got to be Bradley against Forest, where he got done for fouling a player who was 10 yards offside.
But tossing was the one that I ranted about on the pod, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
he
About
did.
like
Yeah,
the
yeah, that was
spectacularly
bad.
bad red. Um, Yeah, that I mean the Tossin one. Like I do remember the Bradley one. The Tossin one is about as egregious
Yeah,
a red card as I've seen because like once the missed offside has happened, which can happen when in a non VAR world, like these things then happen in terms of fouls. Like the Tossin one just shouldn't have been, which I think is the
he
big
didn't get
difference.
red card. Are you on about the one
Oh,
with
that was a
Barnsley?
penalty, wasn't it?
It's a penalty. I think Buddy keeps, whenever I've heard him talk, he keeps going on about the Harry Wilson one in like game week 2, when a lot of people captained Wilson over Mitrovic.
Yeah.
And he got.
No,
I think that's
now
probably
that I've
what
thought about
Buddy's
it, that
thinking.
was a penalty, so that's fair enough. I really don't remember that many sort of like egregious red cards or anything like that. Um, was it the worst red card? So I can interpret that any which way. Oh, that's easy
Yeah.
then. Sam Surridge, when he decided to bury his head into an opponent's chest and got like off the pitch and got sent off for it.
What about Samba when he hit the
Oh God, free
just
Samba. I
just
forgot
slapped
the
the
Brees Samba.
Stoke
And I
player?
was literally telling someone about it like a week ago. Brees Samba for clipping Phil Jagielka around the back of the head.
I can't wait till game week 1 in FPL, and everyone's brought him in because he's 4.5, and they've watched him in the penalty shootout, and he goes and does something stupid and gets sent off.
Yeah. But I like a real sliding doors moment. I think one of the reasons that Sam Surridge ended up at Forest was that red card. If anyone does remember it, go back and look at it. It was one of the most ridiculous red cards. There was some sort of scuffle, and he basically goes in for like a head nuzzle or like a little sort of butting of heads and gets himself sent off. It's just absurd. But yeah, the Brees Sample one is a very good shout. And FPL Teach Mode Andy asks, early riser and late riser. Which player was best at the beginning of the season? Which one at the end?
So I've gone for Swift early season and late Piero. His last month was ridiculous.
So the early season I was torn between two, because there was Swift and there was Brereton Diaz.
Yeah.
In terms of how much of his points were sort of weighted early, but I do think it's Swift where he was the top scorer for ages, despite the fact he basically hadn't returned because he'd had such an incredible like first part of the season. Um, and yeah, Joel Piro, particularly as I owned him sort of for that stretch run, it was just like, yeah, keep counting those points. It really was remarkable where it was just sort of like he'd been a bit hit and miss, and then he just sort of hit a run where he just kept sort of returning. It wasn't always goals, but it would be a goal or an assist or both. And
To get
um,
a top bonus because no one else did anything.
so I mean that's we're in agreement there. And the one other question I had was from Forever QPR, who said the worst and best away fans. So I went to one championship game this season, so I think you're best placed to answer this, Dan.
I'm going to say worst. I can't remember. Worst were Barnsley. They didn't even sell out Luton's end. And bear in mind, we only give
Yeah.
like 1,000 tickets. It was a Tuesday night, and they were they were absolutely terrible. But yeah, Barnsley best. That's quite hard. Like, most of them, because of Kenilworth Road is a good at. It's definitely not Stoke. I'll tell you that for a
No.
fact.
I mean,
Um,
unless you like 49 renditions of Delilah, there's not much to gain from Stoke fans. I'm
one of
joking,
the
Stoke
best.
fans, don't come after me.
There's been a few good atmospheres. The Forest game was really good because the ref was, and just both sets of fans were moaning at him. The Forest game was good atmosphere. Luton Millwall's normally always quite good as well. But yeah,
Yeah, the only game I went to was Luton Stoke, and the Stoke fans are an interesting lot. Um, like I say, I hadn't realised they sung Delilah quite that much until I was in with them. Just like, wow, they sing this a lot. um, but yeah, so I'll leave your answers there. Um, so that's sort of everything. Um, um, message us with any particular disagreements you have. If you're just going to say things like, from my team of the season, for example, I would have had Naismith over McKenna. I don't need to hear that. I've said it was very close. Like, you don't need to message me with that. We might run a little bit of sort of, as we did with the combined 11 for the playoff final, we might do a little bit of sort of polls on Twitter, sort of position by position, something like that, so everyone can vote. Everyone loves a poll. Uh, Everyone loves to vote on things. That's one thing that's always clear. People love to vote on things. So that's sort of our review of the season. We've got one more pod to come next week,
we're
and then
going to tell what that is.
we might have a mini break. So yeah, we'll announce it now. Like we've sort of been sort of playing it cool, but we can announce it now. So we've got a quiz, and the quiz will be with done by our new co-host. Our new co-host is our old co-host. Jamie is coming back to the pod. I know some people will be happy to hear that. Some people might be less happy to hear that.
The swear jar will be happy.
Yeah. I haven't had to use the explicit rating on the pod for a while when I'm posting them. That streak is over. So Jamie will be coming back primarily sort of the Sunday game week review pods that we do. Any sort of extra ones we do during the week, he may well not be on with us, but yeah, he'll be coming back now that he's handed over all the sort of responsibility. He's decided to come back. So so he'll be coming back and doing a quiz for us. I'm sure some of you will like to play along. We'll explain that format when we do the quiz.
I don't even know the format, so they might need to explain it to me.
Yeah, it's relatively easy to explain, but we'll explain it next time. I'm not sure Jamie's done the quiz yet, so in theory we're doing that next week, but we'll see. And then we'll sort of give you a bit more information about what we're going to be doing in terms of any sort of upcoming content after that. So that all that's left is to say thank you for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Unbelievable!